Gents, welcome back. Managed to convince you all to come back to the studio again. Happy days.
The Wagamama's offer did help.
Yeah, it didn't take much convincing, but
A Katsu carry here.
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
Good times. No, seriously, really do appreciate it. And I think that the 4 episodes that we did as a group previously, including Dan, of course, who'll be with us for some episodes shortly, then, it was really well received. And I know that you guys have, by the sound of it, had some good feedback as well. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
yeah,
really good feedback.
Really did. I did just want to take a quick moment to thank everyone that reached out, because I had quite a lot, a surprising amount, and not just people that I knew, some people that were obviously fans of yours that I am not in contact with, and they said they really enjoyed it.
Love that.
And then the people at the competitions that said they listened, and it meant a lot. So
that's brilliant.
Thank you guys. Yeah, it was real justification that what we did was as enjoyable for other people as it was for us.
Yeah, we loved it, didn't we?
Yeah,
so good. That's why we're back again. But I know you guys do having meaningful conversations, and I think we scratched on the surface of topics which probably don't get talked about as often.
Yeah.
So that some of the depth of conversation that we had seemed to connect really well with some of the audience. And some of the comments that I had were based, again, validated that. It's just that I really liked the fact that you guys just, no ego, just got into those conversations and had a bit of depth to it. So, and you'd had some comments as well, didn't you, Ross?
Yeah. Some people reached across from over the pond.
Yep.
Which was really nice. And yeah, good. I guess like Jack said, it's when you're sitting having a conversation with friends and then people go, "Oh, that really helped. We were having this problem, and actually listen to that, and it helped resolve this, or it helped us look at it from this angle." Humbling.
Yeah, that's nice. Really good.
Nice bit of affirmation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're back again, and hopefully we can add some more value. And I know we'll have good conversations and some good snacks and food as well.
Or you guys might never hear this.
Exactly. Yeah,
Like now.
It'll just be good for us. And Dan will join us for some content later today. When that'll be great as well. So thanks again for making the investment of time. It's a pretty busy period. We're recording this now. Where are we? Sort of 2/3 the way through February, and we're right on, I guess, the door of competition season. I guess. Well, for some of you've completed already.
Yeah. We had Welsh last week.
You did the Welsh, yeah. And then there's going to be a whole flurry of activity, both domestic and I guess international as well, with Europeans, which I guess is the next major for
Europeans, World Cup.
For you guys, World Cups, of course. So there's a lot going on. How is that? Like Jack, starting with you, do you like this time? Is it chaotic? Is it, how's it going?
Yes and yes. Yeah.
You like it? It's chaotic.
Absolute chaos, but I do love it.
Yeah.
And I'm beginning to love it more and more. I think it's having a really amazing team of people around me. The kids are on board because we're talking a lot about what to expect.
Yeah.
And it's good. Really, really enjoying it.
Nice.
And we've got, I think, 2 weeks time and then 4 weeks time and then another. It's a lot.
It's a lot going on.
It's a lot to juggle and I really love it.
Good.
Really enjoying it.
Yeah. Ross, how about you? Well, you're in the mix of a lot of it, aren't you?
Yeah, lots of different angles. Do I enjoy the busyness? Absolutely. It's when I feel I'm at my best. However, for me at this time, I'm in a slightly different position. I'm not necessarily directly personally coaching anyone at the moment. I'm supervising some groups and helping the coaches take their kids and stuff through. And the lack of holding onto the steering wheel, being the person driving it everywhere, is very different.
Yeah.
So it's really nice yet mildly unsettling, just because of the nature being slightly different. I guess that's part of being a mentor, though. Sometimes you've got to do that bit where you go from being the driver to the passenger, and just sort of, or the co-pilot, isn't it? If you're rallying and stuff, you're helping them. You're still, but you're not the person literally making those little decisions or the big decisions. So I do enjoy it, but it's just a little bit different. This British and this English in the approach.
And you're in a leadership role in other areas as well, aren't you? So you're taking on leadership responsibilities and the big picture stuff. That is different, isn't it?
You
have to think a bit different and like think about your chessboard, and it's when you move those pieces and anticipating what's likely to happen next before you make your next move. Because you're not technically the one completely in control, like you said. You're trying to make sure that those pieces get moved in the right place.
I'm trying to make sure that aligns with how other people do stuff as well. As part of management, part of managing things across different chessboards. Each game's slightly different. So the strategy or the tactics got to be slightly adapted for each scenario.
Yeah, you're right.
But with trying to still achieve the same result, you know, whether that's winning or a score or a selection, they're all kind of fall into the same.
How do you find that from like a pressure perspective? Do you feel like it's less or more?
I personally love pressure. Competition floor, competition environment, everything about it I love. You know, from the moment you step out there and it's deathly quiet before anyone else is there and you see the arena or the sports hall, whatever it is, absolutely love it. So the pressure doesn't bother me. I guess as the stakes get a bit higher, it's just the frustration on myself if a decision I've made hasn't fulfilled a particular or desired requirement. That bugs me, but I wouldn't say it doesn't intimidate me. It doesn't.
Do you say you thrive off pressure?
I think so.
Challenge of it?
I think so. Yeah, I do. I mentioned in conversations before, like I keep a real cap on the amount of passion that I have. But in those moments when it really matters, and you know, you got to sort of get your head down and charge forward. Yeah, no, I embrace it wholeheartedly.
Love that.
This is interesting. Do you think you have to be competitive in order to be a really great coach?
I was thinking the same thing.
Ooh.
I love it as well. I really do. And that's never not been the case. So that's a tough question to answer.
Can you love it? So the things that Ross just mentioned there. So walking out into the arena and seeing it for the first time. And this is again, like having been an international athlete, maybe this is different, maybe with the mindset of an athlete versus a coach, or maybe it's the same, but walking out to the arena and all the preparation and like absorbing the environment, feeling the energy, like all of that, none of that is necessarily about like striving to win. It's just about enjoying the environment and that kind of like feeling
being
at
in
home
the moment.
and loving the pressure of having to deliver a result, but that might not necessarily be attached to the will to win. So what do you think, Ross?
That's hard. It is hard. You've got to have an element of competitiveness within you. I was far more competitive, or outwardly competitive, when I was younger. You know, that desire to win. I have a medal around my neck, or
You go again.
or
You know where this is going, don't you?
I wasn't going to bring it up this time, to be totally honest with you. But
We got there somehow.
yeah, but I did bring a framed picture to put on the wall somewhere for you of a podium.
Is that right?
Yeah, and first and
Was that the one where you were on top of the podium? And
you remember?
I've got
You
no
remember?
more space
Excellent,
in this
excellent
venue
excellent.
at all.
Yeah. But no. In all seriousness, to answer the question, what I think changes as you get older is you're doing it for someone else, or you're doing it with someone. So it's their competitiveness that really counts. But as the coach, to fulfill those things and or direct a lot of that, if you haven't got any competitive nature, I think you have a place within a program. I think each of us have certain character traits that provide something, if not a lot. And maybe the competitive side for the other coaches a little bit, because that's just how the dynamics work with the athletes that you've got.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of these people where if I, lose a game of Uno, I throw the cards across the room. I've come close to it. But equally, like I said, there's a place for that person in the team, I'd imagine.
What do you think, Reiss?
I think they can exist separately. Because when I look at myself as when I was an athlete, when I was a gymnast, I didn't feel overly competitive in terms of like wanting to win or wanting to get, I wanted to get a result, but it was like for me. I never felt like I was competing against anyone else.
Right.
So is that competitive? I don't really know.
You're competing against yourself in terms of what can
but
I do
I never felt like competitive.
Yeah.
And I think that came across when I was a coach as well. I was never competitive, but I always strive to help the gymnast do whatever they wanted to do.
Necessarily because you're desperate for that person to beat others.
What I would say is I think I have a concern that with the direction that things travel at the moment with, and rightly so, with having to look after the individual, but also look after the sports person within that and the competitive nature of things, that sometimes you can play down the importance of having to compete and play down the importance of actually there is a desired result we have to get at this event, compared to I've just got to enjoy it and no, it's okay this time. There's a time and a place for the enjoyment, and I'd imagine depending on the athlete you have, like if their motivation is to enjoy it and that leads them to that result, then you've got to get into that with them. But equally, I think that
resonates with me because my motivation was always enjoyment and experience, never result.
Yeah.
And I think
so then when a result was thrown into the mix, how did you manage that?
In terms of when the result was put on me, in terms of like, you have to make this result to get this, or the result happened because I...
No, the result, like you've got to hit this to do that, or qualify at this event
we
to
have
that
qualification scores, don't we, for example?
Because a lot of that's quite relative at the moment within the BG system and having to qualify from your home nations into the...
I guess any form of selection and selection is... I completely understand what you're saying. It's nice to just keep on taking pressure off.
Yeah.
Because we feel like it might be the healthy thing to do of saying, oh, it doesn't matter how you compete. It doesn't matter how you if you make mistakes.
And that's very dependent on age and maturation.
I understand that. But then at some point, if it's going to get serious,
it's crunch time.
You have to deliver in order to get selected, and if you want to be taken seriously as a competitor. But that's what's separating national team athletes and your everyday athletes, because at the end of the day, if there's an investment from, let's say, a national governing body into an athlete, so you are on I'll keep this nation free, but let's say you're on a national team, you might be funded. That stuff comes with responsibilities, and the NGB does need something back in terms of their investment. It's unfortunate that the world of sport is still a business. And it is transactional in that way, but ultimately that is elite sport. It is transactional. Athletes are on a national team to try and deliver a result for that nation. That's why the national team exists, right?
I think going back to as I was when I was an athlete, I think my motivation came from, like I said, like trying to be the best that I could be, experience and enjoyment, which allowed me to do that job for the governing body.
So you almost compartmentalize what they needed as it's over here. I know that's what's necessary for something, but I keep my focus. What drives me?
For me to get to that, I need to feel I'm having a good experience. And that was my motivation.
I certainly don't feel like there should be direct pressure from an NGB, essentially, that if you don't do this, then, you're no use to us. I'm certainly not suggesting that we treat athletes like pawns. It's just a case of bringing it back to the reality of, at some point, selections are going to be important. And if you mess one up, you're out. I certainly don't, and I don't agree with that kind of... process of thinking. But at some point you have to be of value, don't you? And that is the harsh reality of elite sport.
I had a conversation with a parent just the other day, and they come and they were asking about we've just done a pre-grades competition, and the real grades are coming up, and she was a bit nervous. Her daughter actually did pretty well at the pre-grades. But she's like, if they mess up at the next comp, will they get dropped out of their squad? And I was like, no, absolutely not. We wouldn't make that sort of a decision or reaction off one competition. We probably wouldn't make that off of 2 or 3 even. But if it was a series of events that led us to believe that your daughter was in the wrong group based off not being able to perform and have the results that we felt were right, then we'd, react, but not off a single incident.
Particularly for the younger kids, of course, because they need to learn to compete, kids. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what I was going to say, because also competing is a skill, right? Like...
Competition's the ultimate training session.
Like the difference between doing routines in your training, even if it's under controlled competition and environment, it's really difficult to replicate that competition feeling. And the only way you can practice that is by doing lots of competitions. And that's one thing I found as a senior gymnast. There's not as many,
right?
Which then makes the pressure of each competition rise because you don't get as many opportunities to practice competing.
So
that makes sense.
Do you feel that that's something you can actually teach your athlete to do? And are they a true competitor, or have they learnt to compete? Because I've had a lot of experiences in the time that I've been at South Essex that have led me to believe that you're born a competitor. And you can't teach someone to really compete.
I think it's how you deal with it. how you deal with the competition.
The coach
as an
or the
athlete.
athlete?
No,
Sorry.
the athlete.
I don't think you're born with it, but I think it is like many aspects of a child's vision and views and values. I think it's kind of embedded. A lot of it is embedded before they reach us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
by the time they're 7 years old, whatever messages they've got around failure and making mistakes, or whether you should show off or not, or whether you like performing, so much of that is embedded before they ever start competing in gymnastics with us as coaches. I think that's what you're then working against. And it's easy to take what they have got and just amplify it because they've already been sent the messages of being a performer, and doesn't matter if you make mistakes and there isn't any pressure and all that kind of stuff. That's easy to then teach that kid to go out on the stage and absolutely like own the podium.
Do it in that environment. Yeah.
And you've got the others that are coming in really, really timid, anxious, or maybe they don't play as much at home. Maybe, all of that kind of stuff, which then leads to like they're far further down that scale of like being a performer. And actually coaching will still help them to rise, but it won't take them to the same level as someone that comes in and has already got some of those qualities. That's kind of like how I kind of feel about it. Yeah. And I know the difference and we both have worked with an athlete who's a natural competitor who, like, the bigger the audience, the better they are in terms of the more excited they are to compete, the better they will actually perform.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think you could teach that. Is trying to facilitate them to get to that stage, and taking away all the things that stop that athlete from coming to you. Like, what are all the things that we could potentially be like messages as coaches that we're sending, and of course parents, just as importantly, which detract from their ability to go out and perform. So many things probably about like the way that we talk to them, the messages that we send. Like you'd mentioned about managing expectations. That doesn't happen, then actually they are walking out with the wrong kind of pressure.
Not from early enough, I think. And I think it is expecting failure and experiencing failure from a young age. I think this is huge.
Being okay with it.
Yeah. I think I may agree that I don't know if there's much evidence to suggest that competitiveness is hereditary. I don't know. But
if it did come from your parents, it would be because they have taught you the same mindset.
You still have to foster it.
It's not in their genes. It's learned behaviour and learned attitudes, which is.
But how do you get better at competing? Like Reiss said, you have to compete more, and with that's probably going to come some failure, and ideally at a young age. So they're not particularly successful through their childhood, and then hit 12, typically in our sport, when things do start getting a bit more. Difficult, skills take longer to develop, and they've got no idea how to deal with it because they've not done it before. And then I doubt the competitions are particularly enjoyable at that point because you have to be
curse of early success, isn't it? When they just go out and they do a good job when they're young, and it just doesn't build the grittiness that you need.
The grit.
And I think the failure, because we talk about this a lot, like the failure is so important, but it needs to be coupled with love and support, because you need the kids to be okay with making mistakes. They need to learn to fail more than they need to learn how to succeed.
I wish there wasn't such a negative connotation, like a rephrasing of the word, maybe, I don't know. But
I think it gets thrown around, like we could probably all name loads of quotes around failure. Failure is feedback. Failure is, this and that and the other. It's like,
failure is data collection.
But how many people are actually still using failure as an embedded part of their philosophy? It's like, again, one of our mentors would say that his gym's a research and development center. It's like, it's all about learning like what works and what doesn't. So that they can get rid of the stuff that doesn't. And it's just about like, let's fail as quickly as we can on something to learn what will succeed. But I think if failure is not coupled with love and support, so take a 9-year-old kid that goes to competition, has a terrible day. Well, that failure is only going to be useful if the arm is around them of then nurturing them through that and saying, this is part of the process. It's like, you're amazing still. Like, this happens to everybody. This is part of the process. And not changing behaviour, not loving them any less, not having repercussions. And
that one competition doesn't define you, right?
It
doesn't define.
Absolutely.
It boils down to your philosophy as a coach, doesn't it? I think. Where you're going to lead with joy and love and all of that good stuff, and still have that element of, we want to go out there and do really well still, obviously. And I want that for you because I get to experience adrenaline from that. Your adrenaline, but because I'm not the one that can do it, you're the one that has to actually perform. I want a bit of that. I'm competitive myself, but if you're not enjoying it, then
maybe even the reframing of how we're entering into competitions, and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, but like competing to participate, competing to learn, and then competing to contend.
Yep.
and sort
I
of
like that.
sectioning it off in.
I was waiting for you to say compete to win, and then you said compete to contend. I like
No,
that.
because I think contending is different,
Yeah, yeah.
and winning as a result of being a very good contender
Yeah, I like it. I like
within
the
that
language.
system. Because at the same time, you might have your best day, but the other person's had their best day, which just happens to be better than yours.
Yeah.
But if you've done the practicing and then you've done the learning, you're going to manage that
Mm-hmm.
better, and then off the back of that, when you go and contend again, you might level up.
Yeah.
and you might win that battle, that psychological. It might be something as simple as that, finite, and then it is different. Then you might win. But like I say, I think the contending,
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's good.
I
It's
like
cool.
having the three and
we did this last time. I
Yeah,
worked best in threes. Threes, it's 1, 2, 3, ABC.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
simple, me.
yeah.
I can
Good. I like
directly
that.
relate that to something right now, though. We've got the Welsh, the English, and the British, and it almost works perfectly.
It's like a ramp, isn't it?
It
It's like-
really
yeah,
is.
yeah.
And we're speaking all the time at the moment about not being 100% competition ready
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
Welsh.
Yeah.
Because it's then, I believe, 6 weeks until the British.
Yeah.
And we don't want you peaking for the Welsh. That would be devastating for us, even though you'd probably feel great. And they don't really understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't
I mean, I'm going
maintain
to a
peak for
competition
6
and I'm not
weeks.
supposed to
Yeah.
do well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But other sports have it, right? They have warm-up games, off-season
Yeah,
games,
yeah, yeah.
like
But again,
friendlies.
It's helping them understand. It's not going to the competition.
It's never friendly.
So
Friendly.
But it's not going to the competition not doing well. It's going to the competition. You're still going to do your best. If the result isn't,
Yeah, of course.
100%,
Yeah.
it's
okay.
And I think that's the bit we miss. And because we as adults understand it so well, sometimes we can fly over the description,
Yeah, yeah.
depending on what age,
Yeah.
children, adults we work with.
Oh, yeah. This is only the benefit of hindsight, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but also parents, because parents would maybe not understand the logic. Like, what do you mean we're going to a competition when we know they're not ready yet? And it's like, yeah, and it's fine. It's like,
yeah.
we're expecting there will be some mistakes because it's just, it's early season. But the reason that we're doing this is
XYZ,
Yeah, we train through competitions, not only to competitions. So yeah, some good stuff there.
I think I believe there's still quite a lot of education to help coaches out there truly understand that. Even from a county level through to a regional level, or regional to national, and then national to like. I think there's a huge piece to help people really grasp management in that
Of
Because
competition
of competition expectation. Why we're doing this comp for this reason. Because saying it's one thing, actually playing that out and practicing that is quite different.
Yeah.
I've made the mistake in the past. Yeah, we're turning up to this comp, we're only going to do this, that, and the other, and then half around, oh my god, we're going to win. Yeah, oh my god, we're doing so well. And I've lost the track of what the whole purpose of why we've gone to this comp is. But that's being a bit younger and not understanding or learning from the mistakes we've discussed many times before. I think trying to help people understand that and plan that out properly is still something that could really, we could really dive into. And
That's really tough. Yeah.
that management's not easy.
No.
Part of it, obviously, this is part of competition. It's about comparison, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then when you've got, again, let's take an 11-year-old. You've got one 11-year-old that's on their own journey, and then you've got another 11-year-old that's on their journey, and they're not ever going to be aligned. And so instead of just thinking about, well, where am I at? This 11-year-old is comparing himself against another 11-year-old's journey. And go, okay, well, you're telling me this, but that my competitor is doing this. They've just got their double back for the first time on their own, and they've been to a competition and won a medal, and I haven't. And it's I think really difficult for any parent, coach, or athlete to understand that everyone's on their own journey.
Yeah.
Like, you're not on the same train tracks. And so, let's be real. If an athlete was to have, or a gymnast to have, a 15-year career, there's going to be times where they're going to be injured in that period and they're not able to compete. There's going to be some real lows for potentially lots of different reasons. There's going to be massive highs. There'll be competitions that they win, competitions which are disastrous.
Yeah.
There's like all of that, and both of those 11-year-olds are going to have that, but they're going to have them at different times. So you're comparing someone's success, but you just got to go, like, and we said this before recording, enjoy that right now. Like, at some point, unfortunately, that's not always going to be the case.
Yeah.
That's it.
Your next competition, you're on a high right now. Your next competition, it might be the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And whereas I'm going to go ahead, and it's just like, we've just got to understand that everyone's on a different timeline.
It's the this too shall pass.
This too shall pass.
mindset.
Yeah.
If you're having a really bad time, don't worry.
Yeah.
It will stop. It will get better. But if you're having a really good time, don't get too excited,
That's
because enjoy it whilst
it'll
it's
pass
there.
too,
but
yeah.
it will come crashing down.
Yeah.
I remember there was a period when I think I was probably a junior. There was like 4 of us, similar age, and it was like each year was like each individual's year. There was like a year where no matter what competition I went to, like comp was perfect. I'd win all the medals. And then the next year, it might have been someone else's turn, and they were like, I had a devastating year. And it's like understanding that.
Yeah, and that's like so normal.
Yeah,
It's just
so
his
normal.
time.
Yeah,
Everyone's got their time.
Yeah.
And obviously some have their time more often than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at some point, everyone, even the very best in the world, have those lows, those mistakes, those terrible competitions.
And the unfortunate reality is you might not ever have that time as well.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult to explain to a child.
brutal part of elite
I mean,
sport.
I wouldn't recommend trying to explain that to a child, actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for us as leaders and parents, and keep that in mind.
That is difficult.
It also might never happen, which is
Yeah.
pretty devastating as well. But sport.
And I guess that ultimately brings us back to that little balancing act of, are we here to win? Are we here for this? What's
What
the
are we really
purpose?
doing
Where, what we really doing it for? And then balancing that with what I said on the contrary earlier on.
Yeah.
With, what's right for who and at what age.
But I also think again, going from when I was a gymnast, like that goal or that North Star, like as you get older, you see it change depending on how your career goes, if that makes sense. So understanding that you're not on the same train track as someone else and they're reaching for this. Actually, for me, for example, I aim to go to as many competitions as I could in so many different countries so I could experience traveling. It wasn't to go to the World Championships and win because I knew I wasn't in contention to win the World Championships. But what I could do is go and be competitive and have a great experience.
Yeah.
So your journey as an athlete and where your North Star is can also change.
Yeah.
I love that. You're using your medium to travel and do what you love.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Short interruption. If you're a head coach, club owner, manager, or leader, check out our high performance health check for a free insight into how well your club's operating within our 6-category framework. Head to nickroddick.com/health check to take our 10-minute assessment. We'll send you the results straight to your inbox. Back to the episode.
That's probably the maturity of an athlete, isn't it? Of sense of, like you'd mentioned before, you're doing it for someone else at some point, and then you start to have your own kind of feelings and thoughts about it, and then you want to guide that direction. And maybe that's where sometimes some conflict starts, because it's like, well, actually, I want to go in that direction. You want me to go in this direction. And maybe whether that's athlete and coach, or even governing body and coach, athlete, whatever.
Yeah. I'll try and get too philosophical, but you have to enjoy it. You really do have to try and enjoy it, because it will just be over so quickly. And we spoke about this recently in the club. Do you know how many more like generations of gymnasts are you going to have? It's probably not that many, is it? So let's really try and enjoy the ones that we're working with now, et cetera, and try and feed that over to the kids. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the girls that we took to the Welsh this weekend. If you guys are listening, we praised them for this. They were amazing. They were so supportive of each other, but also their friends across the gym from other clubs. And we got approached by Martine, the new head coach. She said they were amazing, but then also the welfare officer came over and said our team noticed how supportive, and they didn't have an amazing comp. They did really well, but there was mistakes across the board, and we were like, that's
But you're going to be mega proud of them for that, and how they represent themselves.
So proud of them for that, and they should be very proud of themselves for that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you should be proud because you've had to facilitate like that coming together.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen by accident.
I had a great time. I was going around with them like, brilliant.
But I think some of that comes down to, I know coaches approach competitions differently. I've watched the evolution over a very long period of time now. And I feel like a lot of people are far more supportive. We're all a little bit more integrated. We're all a little bit more happier to share. We're all a little bit more happier to step in and help that other coach's athlete if there's something going wrong, or be just as happy to praise them as we are our own athletes. And working across lots of different organisations and stuff, like I see something very similar. There isn't just these little clusters of clubs that have always been friends. Those clusters and those clubs are growing, and they're bigger, and the variety of people mixing is bigger. And it's nice to see that one growing within a club. But I can definitely say that I can vouch for seeing that firsthand at national squads, at international events, at national competitions. And I think that's a nice side of the sport that I don't think we get to see, or cameras don't pick up, or just the audience themselves might not see.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, and it's certainly not necessarily the narrative that people want to share as well, because it's not as attractive a headline.
Yeah.
Coaches and athletes working together on the international stage.
Having fun.
Yeah, having fun.
Having a great time. Yeah.
No,
I was
scroll
told
past that,
I was told from day one that women's artistic specifically was cliquey.
Yeah.
And I never really quite understood what that meant until I went to my first regional squad, I think it was. And I went, oh, this is cliquey as hell.
Yeah.
No one said, like, I didn't get introduced to anyone. I think I was there with one athlete at the time that was handed to me. So I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I've seen a huge evolution from that. We're so welcoming now.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And they know
like
each other anyway, don't they? The girls all know each other. So they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Love that.
They're friends.
What are some of the specifics around that? So, I mean, when you're at a competition, and I wanted to talk a little bit about etiquette, to be honest with you, because I think that that's probably another thing that we learn through experience. You never learn formal etiquette of how you should behave.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, not even just competitions, but like going to a training camp, for example, like representing. You've just kind of described there the etiquette of the athletes and how they responded in that environment. But then as coaches, no one teaches you that. Like, what are some of the things do you think are probably most important about our etiquette as coaches when we step into an event, an activity like a camp or a competition?
I mean, first thing, so there's an element of teaching etiquette because there's bits in the code that explain you have to behave a particular way at a competition.
Yeah.
You know, there's yellow cards, there's the red cards,
rules and things,
but still, as a young coach going into competitions, I didn't read the code first time till, I don't know, I was probably into my second club, 6 months ago. What's the code of points?
Where's the code?
So there is loose guidelines there. Also, they're not actually loose; they're rules. But actual etiquette, that actually playing out in real life and real time, under pressure, under stress, is only something you can learn by throwing yourself in there and not being afraid to do it. Yeah. And I would highly recommend the sooner you can do that, the better. As uncomfortable as it may make you feel, or having the right team around you to help feel better about
Comfortable about doing that, yeah.
But to jump back to what you're saying,
Another way of asking the question would be, what are some of the things to try and avoid? Where do we get that wrong?
Things about knowing yourself. We did a leadership course at the club recently, and it was really interesting because they gave us a personality profile, which I've never done before.
Right.
And it lists your strengths, but also lists your weaknesses.
Yeah. Which profile was it? If you don't mind me asking.
I can't remember exactly what it was called.
Okay. Spotlight?
Possibly.
Insights?
Possibly. One of them. Yeah.
One of those, or maybe another.
they'd have loads of pretty colours.
We had to answer a load of questions. I think it was like 50 questions. It said at the beginning of the questionnaire, you need to try and answer. It was a 2-answer question. I feel as though I do this, and then it gave you 2 options.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And you had to try not to think about it too much. You had to go bang, 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 bang. And as you're doing it, you find yourself like second guessing it and like getting it. Yeah. Anyway, you burn through these questions and they give you a profile. You're supposed to get it right and wrong. And they give you a name. So I was the performer.
Performer, right, yeah.
Which wasn't a surprise to anyone. But across the board, there was about 6 of us, I think, 6 or 7 of us. And there was 2 of these, and 1 of these, and 1 of these. It was really interesting. But in my weaknesses and my strengths, there were two that I thought were very similar. And it gave me real pause for thought because it was, you lead with humor and you lead with excitement and you lead with, let's have a good time. And I went, yeah, I do. And then on the weaknesses, it says, but not everyone wants or needs that. Yeah. And this came over into the competition recently. I've really tried to keep it light and tried to keep it like, come on, let's have a good time. We're here. But then I had to remind myself that they really need to focus as well, especially before they're about to present their routine. Yeah. So it's introspection. Yeah. It's knowing you. It's knowing your athlete. Really tough.
I think it plays out a little bit that when you first go into these things, you behave at a competition, your etiquette is just how you are as a person. Yeah. For me, I was very young when I first started going to these competitions, so I was just a boy doing what he does at a comp, just the same as what he did in the gym club. Yeah. Then you start to learn how you maybe should behave or what the etiquette is more like, having observed people or being told off a few times or getting your wrist slapped. Then the etiquette becomes something that is your own.
Yeah. Kind of in the middle somewhere.
Somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And then actually you revert back to, in my scenario, just being the boy at the competition that does what he does and feels comfortable doing.
I completely agree with that.
kind of where I've ended up,
yeah.
I think. If anyone else wanted to challenge that.
Yeah.
I don't want to change that at all. You've probably taught me more about etiquette than anyone else, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Wow. Okay.
Wow, okay.
I think you underestimate how good you are at managing your emotions and
Okay.
authentically. So this is, you probably won't remember this because this what I'm about to say happened when we were 16,
Yeah.
15, probably, yeah, about 16. So I remember you and I, because obviously our coaching was done at that stage, side by side, most of it. And I remember we had like we had a plan to like run a group together.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say it was Saturday, 2:00 or something like that. And you were excited about it. And I think I was excited about it. But then my mentor at the time then said, maybe you can help me. And it clashed with that time. And I said to you, just so you know, I'm now doing this. And you told me at the time and you said, just so you know, I don't think that's like, I don't know the words that you used, but you basically said, I don't really think that's great of you because we had a plan and we were going to do this. And then now actually you've just basically gone over. You've ditched me. And it was such a small conversation, but it has always stuck with me because I remember what I took from that was how your values are truly embedded into, and I guess we all are in that instance, your values were definitely stronger and better than mine. That's just one very early example, but I think I've always looked to you as someone who to learn from because I'm the opposite to you, unfortunately, in the sense of like I'm quite emotionally driven with stuff. So if I have a thought, I like to act on it in terms of, I need to go and do that. I want to go and watch that. And I need to ask that question. You're a lot more considered in the sense of, you could probably ask that question at a better time. do you know what I mean? Like, you want to ask the question as well, but like, maybe there's a better time to do it. Or have you thought about they might not be able to do that right now? Whereas I'm a bit more impulsive is probably the right word.
But you say that's for one thing, without getting too bromancy, but that's why we work very well together because I come to you with the things that I don't handle very well and vice versa. But within that scenario, all those scenarios, I think that's one of my weaknesses is that I calculate things a bit too much. Like I don't, you think I underestimate how well I manage my emotions. It's there, it's planned. It's exactly. I probably have underestimated the importance of when to regulate. That much I would say. But I think that's become almost a weakness.
But it's always interesting because like you won't know that I've learned from your etiquette. It's the case of you just being a great example of being really courteous, being really respectful, but keeping and building those relationships with people. Stuff that I wish I could have done better. I'm much better at it now at 37 years old. But when I was 15 to 25, let's say, that was a real like weakness of mine. And so again, like people are always learning from us without us even realizing.
You've reminded me of a really interesting tidbit that was actually a product of this leadership course. It's called amygdala hijacking.
Yeah.
You've heard this before. So it's your fight or flight response, right? Your amygdala is that little part of your brain that deals with emotional responses, and we're not in control of it. It's a very, very This is where it kind of...
We need to start the Chuck Norris jokes, but for Ross.
How do you do that? Yeah. Apparently it happens naturally, and none of us are able to... You know when you have that little moment where you go, maybe I went in a bit hard there.
Yeah.
You shouted at someone or you got annoyed, whatever. But turns out that response only lasts for 90 seconds. And then that's it.
Right.
It's the chemical reaction that happens in your body.
Yeah.
Following the fight or flight response, 90 seconds later, it's done. But we carry those emotions over, usually. And sometimes it can ruin your whole day. And you are choosing to do that. According to the studies.
I've learned near on everything is a choice.
Yeah.
Near on everything. And if we're referring to competitions or etiquette, like in every single moment you have, how heightened you are, how important the event is, how chilled the event is, everything that happens within that rotation is a choice of yours. And you have it in you to make a right or wrong choice, a good or bad choice, a selfish choice, a courteous choice. They're all there. It just depends
On the choice you
if
make.
you actually want to put the energy into doing that, or whether you go into autopilot and you're happy to just be oblivious, and therefore that will result in a particular etiquette that portrays itself.
Yeah, it comes down to awareness, doesn't it?
But then you've chosen to be on autopilot, right?
Yeah, you choose to be
yeah,
feeling
well,
Some people.
Allegedly, it is a choice, which is difficult when you find out after.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
didn't
certainly
have to react that way.
Yeah.
And you go, ooh.
Like, I for me, we mentioned earlier, like, it boils down to what you like doing. I like helping people. Yeah, we've had that discussion before. So competition, I'll help my kids, I'll help their kids. However, there's a time and a place to do that in abundance, or there's a time and a place to be careful and clever and selective about that. Because at the end of the day, depending on there are realms of competition where, you know, your result's going to matter. Now,
Well, it's still a
how
competition,
much?
right?
But it's still a competition. So then you're left. How much do I help an opponent?
Yeah.
If you're going to look at it that way, you know, are you lying to yourself if you don't still offer that same support that you've always done at normal competition? Like, is it
and also, does it actually impact your own ability with your own athlete?
Yeah,
because you're not fully focused on what your athlete needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So-
and it puts me in I'm in a different situation. I said I'm not personally responsible for any athlete at the moment, so it puts me in a different position to be able to do those things or look, even observe differently, because I'm not so tunnel visioned and focused on just what my athletes are doing, rightly or wrongly. But equally, I know, having been tunnel vision like that, the benefits in competition, well, they're massive.
It's hard, isn't it? Let's take a scenario where you choose to help set the bars up for another competitor. In that time, you could be speaking with your own athlete who's actually about to go up next, making sure that they're in the right mindset. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do, I mean, this isn't just about etiquette, it's about competition strategy, I guess. But, you know, do you go and help? Or do you appear to be ignorant, arrogant, and not a team player? But actually you're doing what you're there to do, which is to make sure that your own athlete that you're working with is going to deliver the best possible result. And you need to be speaking to them, coincidentally, unfortunately, at the same time this person needed bar support. So, but other people would interpret that as, arrogant, not a team player, not hitting. It's like, well, hang on a minute. It's.
I think it also depends on the athlete you've got in front of you, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, of course, they might not need anything.
There's so many variables
on
that
their
go
own.
into those situations.
So many
right?
variables.
That's what it's driven by.
But it's what we read into, I think, too much as context to everything.
Yeah.
And we're so quick to judge people's behaviour and attitudes.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, because for example, you went to that regional, whatever it was, like years and years and years ago. You could be there really quiet because you might be anxious or nervous, and this happens for a lot of people. So actually they don't interact with others because they're truly anxious about being in that environment, not knowing anyone. So but they come across as being quite cold, like, oh, they're not very warm as a person, are they? They're very isolated, or oh, they're arrogant, they're quiet, they think they know it all. It's like, well, actually that person, it's like it's been almost debilitating for them to even walk into this place.
Into
the first time.
I think it was the opposite for me. Because I was so nervous, I came in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
And was shaking hands and hugging, and then I got a real sense of like, oh, have I come in too hot here, sort of thing. But I don't really care.
Yeah.
But you do as well, because after I was like, oh, did I set a good example?
It just felt wrong.
Yeah, it just felt wrong.
Yeah, it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
But it just comes back to context and understanding how other people respond and react to different situations, don't they? Like some people withdraw, some people, like you said, become louder, and it's their way of managing how they might be feeling.
There's also, you also learn what works for you, don't you, at a competition? Like there's nothing in the rule book saying you can't ask questions of each other and stuff, or you can't communicate with other coaches. So actually taking that time to go, actually, I need a bit of help. Can you forewarning someone, or having enough confidence to say to a stranger, oh, do you have the bar tension the same as that? You know, there's a few little things you can just throw out there. If you don't get the response that you're expecting, well, you haven't like upset anyone, but you've put the offer out there. You've dipped your toe in the water to see if it's the right sort of place to be asking for help, or if you're gonna have to really look after yourself. There's all sorts of
loads of little things you can do, isn't there? Yeah. We were rotating with a gymnast that I'd never met before and a coach that I'd never met before. So we introduced ourselves, but then I said, what's your gymnast name? And then we told the girls, so then they could cheer for her if they wanted to. So you have to.
Yeah.
But they would do that for their friends. So, and they did. They were really amazing with that. And
Love that.
they didn't have to do that. It wasn't it's not their job to cheer for other people if they don't want to. But what a lovely thing if they do and if they can.
And that's where, some athletes, and a lot of them really, kids are able to have that compassion and empathy, knowing how they would feel in that situation. I'm in a group with people that I don't know. I've got no support here apart from my coach. So they probably felt like if we were in that position, we'd like that as well. But isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
And then you're embedding those values and qualities into those kids that are probably likely to do that without being prompted in the future.
I always find it fascinating when there's like a full team, maybe 4 or 5 gymnasts, 2 coaches, and they're either on vault, like you said, or on bars, and all the tensions are being done. It's like a well-oiled machine. I always find that like really fascinating.
But I've found that quite an interesting thing, because you look at it and you think it's just organic, but having been in that now, rehearsal becomes a massive part of that. In the prep for the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, myself and Becky from Scotland, we knew what person, what thing, where this is going, where that go. Like it was tweaked. It was so refined, but it also got to the point through rehearsal that it did become organic. And then you almost have like a look at each other that you know what that look means, or even if I'm trying to say a sentence but it's coming out like blurb because you're in the moment, you kind of still understood it, or it's quite.
It looks like a dance. It's so good.
It was cool.
Like, because then the gymnast before, like, mate, do their routine, whatever, they land, and then suddenly it's like 10 ants. They're like, it's completely different, and then you go in, there's just like one gymnast standing there ready to go again.
But it's like that pit stop, isn't it?
It's
like
incredible. Everyone knows their jobs.
Incredible.
And I don't know, like some of it's definitely choreographed, but some of it isn't as well.
Well, the chaos of it isn't.
Just happens so organically sometimes.
But this is where coaches can mess up things for their athletes, because if you haven't taken that process seriously, I know you talk about the Commonwealth, that's a major international, but sometimes we just underestimate what that chaos feels like, what the formality is, that someone is going to be there with a stopwatch going, you've got 50 seconds to do the bars, and like, no, that's it, you're off. I remember doing, when I was on the floor for Europeans, and I was stood at the bottom of the steps ready to go up on the podium to get the bars ready. And I know in the rules, you've got to wait to a certain point. But then the judges basically went, as in like, you can come up the steps, but in the rules, technically I wasn't allowed, and I was at conflict. I was just like, what do I do?
Do I go?
She's just given me permission. Okay, but that hasn't come from like a head panel, or maybe it has. I'm like, no, I've got an opportunity here to get the bars ready without the chaos. Oh my goodness, that will be amazing. But I'm like, a bit like, what do I do? And
Did you do it?
I don't think I did.
Oh, okay.
I think I waited. Because I didn't want to jeopardize anything that happened there. So, right, I've got an interesting question. I think it's interesting personally myself. Would you still coach if you weren't involved in competitions? Not you personally, but if we just went into the gym, taught gymnastics, but there wasn't a competition at the end of it, would you still coach gymnastics?
I could wholeheartedly say yes.
You would? Yeah. Because you love teaching gymnastics. Doesn't need to be connected to an outcome.
As much, well, for me, there is still an outcome. Like, as much as I love being on the competition floor, and like I said, I really do love being at competition, the outcome for me is the teaching, also the process of teaching and what comes from that. So whether it's the skill or the achievement of a goal, or it's the teaching process that draws me in every day.
I think that day-to-day connection of a group, tribe, like I know you don't have the competitions, you don't have that thing that you're all working towards, but that thing can be just being better.
Something else,
Like, that is what draws me.
Still being a high performer and that. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, the same. Yeah, the same. And the reason why I struggled a little bit with the can you learn to be competitive question earlier was because I don't think I was very competitive as a junior coach.
Right.
I think I was competitive when I was in my own version of that, which was my martial arts. But I don't remember loving it. And now I do. I love it. So, but that was never there at a base level. Gymnastics is just so fun.
Yeah.
And that never left me. I think if you took it away now, I'd be fine.
Love it.
Yeah, we'd just turn it into, like you said, another goal. A different goal. Yeah.
What about yourself?
Yeah. I mean, competition for me, I can take it or leave it. I probably, like most people, I love competitions when they go successfully. And when you go into a competition knowing that you're prepared and you feel comfortable, and I like the pressure, but I like pressure when I feel prepared at the same time. So it's like I'm ready for whatever comes my way.
Yeah.
And I don't like those environments when you're walking into something knowing this is going to be the wrong kind of chaos. Like I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a concern that you might have in the back of your mind about any aspect of that, whether it's the environment or whether an athlete's ready and all those kind of things. So pretty easy to say, yeah, when things go well, I love it. And when things I don't, you know, but
That's a juggling act, isn't it?
yeah, but if I was just like in the gym with kids learning all the time, I mean, I do love that. That's just, I much prefer that than competition. And particularly, I just hate the bit in the middle. I don't mind, I mean, I love competition, but I don't particularly like the process of preparing for competition, like many athletes don't either. Yeah, like
I think when I was a gymnast, 3 or 4 weeks before a competition, we'd have a week what we call welly week, which is where you give it some. And you do the most amount of routines. It doesn't matter how they look. You get from A to B, however you can, just to build capacity. And when there was a time when there was like, I'd say 8 senior gymnasts, and was all in welly week, that was always my favourite week.
Really?
Just because it's like everybody comes in and you're just all grafting together.
This is why I need my notebook with me all the time. I'm going to write down welly
That was
week.
like my favourite week of any.
welly.
Yeah, welly week. Yeah, yeah, that was always my favourite week.
Yeah.
That's
So once that week was done, I was a bit like, I only got to do one
just
routine
a
now.
cunt now, yeah.
Yeah, like, that was always my favourite week.
Yeah.
So I think again, like I said, like the togetherness, working towards that one thing was what I really enjoy, and I still enjoy now.
Yeah, nice.
I think one of the reasons I could live without, I could just live without competition is because when I think back to the different types of sports I did and how I competed, whether it's an individual thing or a team thing, from the age of 9 to 17, my thoughts and approaches to competition within that period were so varied and so different. And I try and think about this when I'm, you know, we're structuring this with the kids, we're structuring that with the young adults, and, you know, even asking a 9 or 10-year-old, you know, what do you think about competition? They could give you the most wishy-washy answer in the world, or they could really surprise you with a really strict answer, you know, and the variations, as I say, that fall within the time frames that we work with them can be quite obscure. So would I risk not doing what I love doing off the back of someone just changing their mind one day because competition meant this yesterday, but actually I don't want it to mean that today. And
that's a final sort of discussion point, I think, on this one is whether maybe you've had gymnasts that have said to you, like, I really love gymnastics, but I just don't want to do competitions anymore. Can I still be a part of this group?
yeah,
And then what? Because then it's now you're thinking, okay, right, so they're not going to compete. Maybe that's obviously space within the group for athletes that do want to compete. There's resources being applied to this gymnast. Now we're serving a very important role for that child in their development and, you know, holistic self. But from a club's perspective, maybe that now, you know, that looks a bit different because we're not. It comes back to again where the athlete is that fine line between it is transactional in some regards. When there's a relationship with an athlete, but where do you kind of? Sorry to throw this one at you at the last minute, but like where do you sit with that in terms of what would you do in that scenario? I'm not, and particularly if it was a.
I think you know, pulling it full circle a little bit. Jack mentioned something about your philosophy earlier on, and even your club's philosophy. Now, if your club is purely business and purely transactional, it's quite easy. The cut's the cut. But if you are more holistically based, or your philosophies are around, you know, understanding the individual and growing with the individual, then you'd keep them in the nest for a little bit longer before they did take flight. How long they would sit there would be a discussion I think you'd have to come back to, because what I would say in that scenario is they're doing that because their comfort zone and their safe place is gymnastics. Most of our athletes have been in the same gym or a gym since a little kinder gym or a toddler, all the way through to early, maybe even mid-adulthood, you know. So, yeah, you're going to kick them out? No, probably not. But that's the type of people we are. So
yeah. But again, the context is if you had 6 or 7 want to do the same thing and now you've got a whole group, essentially, then you might have to have a different sort of view on it.
I think my initial thought is nurture, because then they may come back to wanting to compete again.
Yeah.
Because like we said earlier,
it fluctuates, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like That's my first initial thought.
It might be connected to some fear of competition.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really love this, but I'm really scared of this actually.
Yeah,
So maybe
yeah.
it's just easier I don't do it, which is
Yeah.
where, again, it's like, okay, this is comfortable.
Yeah.
Do we need to get them more comfortable with being uncomfortable? Yeah. Jack?
Yeah, I completely agree. I've definitely been in that situation, and in previous clubs, the answer's been no. I don't have anywhere for you to go, unfortunately. Now I'm at such a fantastically bigger club.
Yeah.
We've got so many different options, from like performance to advanced to 16 hours to 10 hours to advanced GFA. Like there's somewhere where you can go that we can figure out where you. So that's nice. That's a nice feeling.
Yeah.
It would never just be no
Yeah.
or goodbye. Because I would never recommend going cold turkey on something that you've been doing for such a long time. And I have been there as an athlete myself, where I went, I don't want to do this anymore. My dad didn't let me actually.
Yeah.
He said, no, we'll wind down.
cut
If
back
you want, we'll cut back, but we're not just stopping. That's silly.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I'm like, I'd have been crawling the walls if I'd have just.
Yeah, stop straight away.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, gents. Good conversation.
Yes.
You.
As always.
fun.
And looking forward to the next one. Amazing.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Gymnastics Growth Show. Now, if you're an ambitious gymnastics coach with a hunger for self-improvement, check out my Gymnastics Growth Academy, where you'll find members from over 40 countries, all accessing my masterclasses, courses, templates, live community calls, exercise libraries, and so much more. It's a program that members have described as life-changing. So why don't you check it out for yourself? Head to gymnasticsgrowth.com to learn more. See you on the inside.